Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Zephaniah, the first chapter. And Zephaniah, in terms of the timeline of biblical history and events, was around the time of Jeremiah. Okay, I believe he's placed somewhere around the earlier parts of the reign of King Josiah, and we know that Jeremiah was also around at that time. Okay, now Zephaniah's ministry, okay, is predates the siege of Jerusalem in 586. Okay, so as we read, you'll see that Zephaniah mainly deals with the corruption that's going on here at this time. Because remember that at this time, the northern kingdom has already been removed from their land. And the southern kingdom is what remains in Israel. And so at this point, you had a lot of idolatry going on, right? A lot of Israelites getting into the practices of these heathen nations that were round about, doing the same exact things that the Lord did not like. So Zephaniah speaks against that, but he also spends a great deal of his ministry speaking concerning the day of the Lord, right? So the future judgment that the Heavenly Father is going to bring, okay, upon the world and Israel. So this is Zephaniah chapter 1, verse 1, the day of judgment of Judah. The word of the Lord Yahweh, which came on to Zephaniah, the son of Cushi, the son of Gedaliah, the son of Amariah, the son of Hizkiah, in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah. And usually the first chapter and the first few verses of these books give you an idea of around what time this prophet's ministry took place, by way of who was the king at the time and so on and so forth. Okay, so Zephaniah mainly prophesied to the southern kingdom, as we're going to get into. And when we look into, let me see the name Zephaniah. It says here, Taza, looks like a Tazapana, yeah, if I said that right. But it says here, Yahweh or Jehovah has treasured, and you have the root words here, Tazapa, see, or Tazapan, and it says here, treasure, to hide, to store up. And forgive me if my Hebrew's not 100% right now, but making the effort. So this is Yah, right, which is short for Yahweh. So as you can see, contraction for Yahweh. Okay, so that's why they have it here as Yahweh has treasured or stored up. Okay, so let's go back. Anyway, verse 2. I will utterly, I will utterly consume all things from off the land, saith the Lord Yahweh. I will consume man and beast. I will consume the fowls of the heaven, and the fishes of the sea, and the stumbling blocks with the wicked. And I will cut off man from off the land, saith the Lord Yahweh. So here, to begin with, Zephaniah is already pronouncing the judgment that the Lord is going to bring. And here he's putting an emphasis on the fact that the Lord is not going to exempt man or beast, or every body, everything on the land will be consumed. Now, the stumbling block with the wicked, obviously a stumbling block in the physical sense, right, is actual stone or boulder or block that if you had the blind that was walking, since they can't see and they're just barely getting by, either via way of a stick, a stumbling block would be something you would put in the way, and they can't see it, so they would walk and they would trip on it and then fall. Now, the stumbling blocks here, of course, that you're not supposed to do that, but the major stumbling blocks here are more philosophical, right? Meaning you're putting a stumbling block before somebody that's blind, not physically, but somebody that's not, fully aware to what's going on mentally. So stumbling blocks are likened onto misleading people. Okay, and that's why it says here the stumbling block with the wicked, because you had wicked Israelites and false leaders that would mislead others by putting stumbling blocks before them. Okay, it says, and I will cut off man from off the land, saith the Lord Yahweh. I will also stretch out mine hand upon Judah and upon all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and I will cut off the remnant of Baal from this place, because as I mentioned before, that was, a lot of idolatry, a lot of idol worship, a lot of wickedness was going on in the land. And even when you read in the book of Ezekiel, the Lord constantly, right, around the first few chapters, the Lord showed Ezekiel, look, this is the judgment I'm going to bring. This is the judgment I'm going to bring. Look at the idol worship. Look at the murder. Look at the lies. Look at the things that they're doing. So now you can see why I'm going to bring this judgment upon them, because of the wicked things that they're doing there. Right. So the remnant of Baal being the worshipers, right? Though any worshipers or any last traces of that idol worship of Baal, the Lord is going to cut off from that place via the judgment he was going to bring. And the name of the chemarims with the priests, and when you look into that word, it goes into they define it as basically idolatrous priests or wicked priests. Verse 5, and them that worship the host of heaven upon the housetops. So the host of heaven being, the stars, the moon, the constellations. You have people that worship those, right? And the Lord is also against that. I believe the scriptures talk about that, not worshiping anything in the heavens above or the earth beneath. Now, the housetops, okay, let's see, housetops, Bible times. There were actually places you could go to pray, you could go to, discuss certain things and all of that. And so just wanted to pull up an image, see if I can get maybe a decent looking one. Okay, so this isn't bad, right? And so you can see here that the housetop in the ancient world would look something like this, where this is the main floor, you would have some stairs that would lead to the roof, right? So it wasn't like your typical roof that you have today. It was actually an area where you could like dry your clothes, you could, do certain things right on the top. You could pray, you can do all of that. Okay. And so just so you get a visual of what it looks like over there. So you would have certain people that would worship the stars and all of those things, the heavenly host, on the housetops here, which is going off anyway, right? It says here, and them that worship and that swear by the Lord and that swear by Malcolm. And so you had those that would feign themselves to be fearing Yahweh and following his ways, but then they would go around and take oaths and practices by, as it says, Malcolm, which was, I believe this was the chief deity of the Ammonites, okay, which was also known as Milcom or Molech. And let's pull that up on here. Okay. So it says here, Malakam, great king, the god of the Ammonites and Phoenicians, to whom some Israelites sacrificed their infants in the valley of Hinnom. Also Molech, and you can look it up and see more information about who that deity is if you are interested in that, or at least interested in finding more about it. So here the Lord is saying that he's going to, basically bring judgment upon those that worship, right, these, in a nutshell, these idols, right, these false gods. as well. Verse 6, and them that are turned back from the Lord Yahweh, and those that have not sought the Lord Yahweh nor inquired for him. So we know that during the time of Josiah, right, he ended up fulfilling a prophecy that was mentioned or spoken of him. I believe forgot the exact name of the prophet. It might have been like Ahijah or someone, but there was a prophet that prophesied to Jeroboam, right, that there would come someone that the Lord would raise up, and he would basically break down all the idols. He would break down all the destroy all the idolaters, and destroy and cut down all the groves and all of those things. And Josiah fulfilled that. Now at this point in time, okay, that hadn't happened yet, right? That's why Zephaniah is still speaking concerning the idolatry, the heavy idol worship that's going on in the land. So those that have turned back from the Lord, meaning those that have stopped following the ways of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, they've turned their hearts from serving the Lord, and they've started going in the ways of following these idols. And those that have not sought the Lord, same thing, nor inquired for him. Hold thy peace at the presence of the Lord Yahweh, for the day of the Lord is at hand. For the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai hath prepared a sacrifice, he hath bid his guests. So now Zephaniah starts to go into the day of the Lord. And we know, synonymous with other the writings of other prophets that mention the day of the Lord, it's particularly dealing, with that future judgment. And most of it is pronounced against Babylon, right? Though not all of it is particular or isolated to Babylon. Most of those pertain to judgment coming upon Babylon, right? And the things the Lord is going to do in that time. And in here, the key verse is really the last verse, which indicates to you, where this region is when it talks about like the land being cut off or particular things taking place, right? So reading verse 7 again, it says, hold thy peace. Now, when you hold your peace, you're basically silent, right? So be silent, right, at the presence of the Lord Yahweh, for the day of the Lord is at hand. And when it says it's at hand, it means it's close, it's coming. For the Lord Yahweh hath prepared a sacrifice, he hath bid his guests. And when you go into that, it means he has sanctified, right, his guests. Now, when you read also in the book of Isaiah, the 34th chapter, it is a chapter that goes into the judgment that the Lord is going to bring by destroying America, which is biblically known as Babylon the Great. However, it is written in in a parabolic form where he likens it onto a sacrifice, where the people and so on are likened onto like the rams and the goats and the fat and all of those things. Okay, so similarly here in Zephaniah 1, the Lord was mentioning by the mouth of Zephaniah here a sacrifice that has been prepared. And we know that one of the most important parts of the sacrifice is the actual offering, where it's burnt with fire. Verse 8, and it shall come to pass in the day of the Lord's sacrifice that I will punish the princes and the king's children. And one thing about the scriptures are, there are pretty often you'll see something, I think this is called a hendiatress. If I spelled that right. Well, there you go, hendiatress. It says here, hendiatress is a figure of speech used for emphasis, in which three words are used to express one idea. And so sometimes you'll see something like a similar use where you'll see one, in this case, like one phrase reworded twice or three times to emphasize the same point, right? Like when we go into Zephaniah 1 and we were reading about verse 6, it talks about them that are turned back from the Lord and those that have not sought the Lord. It's still the same thing, right? When they turn back from the Lord and when they don't seek the Lord, they're still guilty of the same thing. Nor inquired for him, guilty of the same thing. So it's just saying the same thing in three different ways here. And when you read in verse 8, it's also similar, right? The princes and the king's children are the same. What do you call a king? In most of the time, right? Unless they have like a daughter, which even she would be referred to as a princess. But in this case, right, a prince is the son of a king. So when it talks about the princes and the king's children, it's pretty much talking about the same thing. And here, as it's referring to the day of the Lord, those princes and the king's children, these are likened unto the nobles, right? Those what in this time prophetically we would call like the elites, right? So these are the ones that are in high positions, okay? And as the Lord says, he's going to punish them, right? And all such as are clothed with strange apparel. Let's go into that word strange. All right. It says Nakaria. It says foreign, right? Foreign, unfamiliar, foreigner, right? And I believe the word Nakar is also one of the words that's used for like like an actual heathen, like foreign heathen. Okay, but still kind of talking about that same thing right now. What you can also do is look at this in different translations, and you can see like the New King James Version says here, and such as that are clothed with foreign apparel, right? In the NLT it says here, and all those that are following pagan customs, right? ESV, and all who array themselves in foreign attire. Okay, so in a nutshell, the Lord is mentioning here the judgment that he's going to bring upon those that are on high, the high ones, which are likened unto the princes and the king's children. In the same day also will I punish those that leap on the threshold, which fill their master's house with violence and deceit, right? And so how do people fill their master's house with violence and deceit? Now, once again, it's written in an analogical form, okay, as to represent either like the servants, that because to have a master meaning your servant, right? So the servants who are doing these wicked and treacherous acts, hence they fill their master's house with violence and deceit, okay, whether it's misleading others, putting stumbling blocks before others, setting people up, whatever the case is, it's some form of wickedness. And that's what's being emphasized here, right? That the Lord is going to punish those that are following these idols, those that are on high, committing these wicked acts, those that are filling their master's house with violence and all of that, right? Verse 10, and it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord, that there shall be the noise of a cry from the fish gate, and an howling from the second, and a great crashing from the hills. Now, these areas, right, the fish gate, second, and all that, these are actual places that were, in Israel at the time that were referred to as such. Like when we read in the last chapter in I believe Zephaniah 14, it mentioned from Benjamin's gate onto some other location, right? So these are known named places within the land at that time. But as we're reading here, this is in terms of the day of the Lord. What the great noise and the crashing here is referring on to the collapse of these different governments, the different economic systems, and so on and so forth, as verse 11 is going to highlight. Because the crashing, okay, of the hills in the scriptures sometimes refer to actual hills, just like mountains refer to actual mountains at times, but also they refer to governments, okay? And so the cry or the howling is going to be that the reaction to this different collapse, right? Or these different collapses that happen where, the economy starts tanking, the government start falling apart, and so on and so forth. Verse 11, it says, howl ye inhabitants of Maktesh, for all the merchant people are cut down. See? And all they that bear silver are cut off. Now, Maktesh at that time was likened onto like a trade city, where you would have Phoenicians and people of different different lands come there and trade. Like today you have Wall Street, right? Or even on a digital sense, right? You have the stock market. So back then, because remember, the Phoenicians were a seafaring people. So they would constantly, travel, right? Get exotic things and they would bring it there. They would trade, so on and so forth. So like I explained, the modern day version of that is like the different, the stock market and so on. And as it says, the merchant people are cut off. So these are these investors, these stockholders, shareholders, whatever the case is. And why are they cut off? Because that money is going to fail. That market is going to crash. And all they that bear silver are cut off, because as we're going to read on down, their money and their silver and their riches is going to mean nothing when it all crashes. Verse 12, and it shall come to pass at that time. So what's happening here is, and then you can see, right, it shall come to pass at that time. So what's happening here is, though it's using names of locations from that time, right, from Jerusalem at this time or Israel at this time, and it's referring to these different, like the inhabitants of Maktesh, right, the people that bear silver. It's when it's prophetic, right, it's applying to this time, but they're not going to use names, right? Zephaniah didn't know what the hell Wall Street was. He didn't know what the hell New York was, or the stock market. Okay, so as these prophets are prophesying, okay, it is our job in this time to break it down and associate it, the parts that are prophetic, to the things that correlate to what these prophets mentioned today, versus the things that happened in their time. So continuing verse 12, and it shall come to pass at that time that I will search Jerusalem with candles. Now you have Jerusalem, which is the actual land of Jerusalem, but Jerusalem is also the people. Okay, so when the Lord is referring to searching Jerusalem with candles, he's really searching the nation, right? And as it says, with candles, meaning to shine a light upon them, to look, to see, and punish the men that are settled on their lease, meaning you have individuals that have become complacent in their wickedness, in not doing the things that are pleasing to the Lord. Why? Because they have the mindset that it doesn't matter whether they do what the Lord requires or not, they're going to be all right. The Lord is not going to do anything about it. And that's why it says that say in their heart, meaning in their mind, this is their inner thought, that the Lord Yahweh will not do good, neither will he do evil. See, so he's not going to do anything about it. That's why they're settled. That's why they're complacent. And, applying that to this ministry, you have individuals that have that mindset, where instead of doing the work they've been appointed to do, which is being diligent and teaching and feeding the Lord's sheep, they have the mindset that they can just be lackadaisical, go through the motions, and just, chill in the background somewhere, because what's the Lord going to do? Right? It's not like if you don't go out to camp or you don't do your lesson, the Lord is going to strike you with a lightning bolt, right? So it's all right. Or it's not like if you do go, the Lord is going to suddenly bless you with gold. But guess what? The Lord says he's going to punish them, right? Verse 13, therefore their goods shall become a booty, and their houses a desolation. So meaning that the people's possessions, right, their riches, the things that they've worked hard for is going to become a spoil, meaning somebody else is going to take it, right? That's what a booty is. A booty is the spoils of whatever it is. If you go to war and you defeat the other nation, the riches, the spoils, the I don't even know what other word I could use for this, that you get that you get back is likened onto the booty, which could include women and children as well as captives. All right. It says, and their houses a desolation. Yeah, because you're going to have that destruction the Lord is going to bring. And before, the ultimate destruction, which we're going to read in the last verse in this chapter, you're going to have, houses being broken into, being broken down. As it says, they shall also build houses, but not inhabit them. And they shall plant vineyards, but not drink the wine thereof. And what that means is, though they may have these houses and vineyards and so on, they're not going to actually get to fully enjoy it because of the first part we just read, how their goods are going to be a spoil and their houses are going to be made desolate. So it's only going to be a matter of time before all the things that they've worked for and built gets destroyed. And that's also echoed in the book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 5th chapter, right? What if our riches by vaunting got us? Verse 14, the great day of the Lord Yahweh is near. It is near and hasteth greatly. So even at the time of Zephaniah, right, which is what, maybe now about like 2,000 and 2,600, over 2,600 years ago, right? Probably 2,700 years ago, around there. He was prophesying of the day of the Lord with this urgency, right? He's hasteth greatly, meaning it's coming quick. And that's because of the magnitude of the things that will actually be taking place. See, the greater in magnitude something is, the more urgent it seems, right? If you were to say, and I'm going to give you an example, right? If you were to say that, the next Olympics is going to be in 4 years, and you're like, yo, it's literally just 4 years from now, the next Olympics is going to happen. Some people might not feel like it's just 4 years. They might feel like, damn, that's kind of a long time that I gotta wait. But if you were to say something like, in 4 years from now, the earth is going to explode, right? Or is going to be destroyed. Now that is a different, that's a different kind of situation there, right? Because the magnitude is now greater. You're saying, shit, I only have 4 years before the earth gets destroyed. So even though it was about 2,700 and somewhat years ahead, because, the day of the Lord really is going to be in our time now, because of how great and devastating it's going to be. Zephaniah was prophesying about it with great haste, right, with great urgency. So continuing in verse 14, even the voice of the day of the Lord Yahweh, the mighty man shall cry there bitterly, right? So those that are considered the mighty men today would be likened unto your warriors, your military, your troops, those that are like the strong men, right, that defend. It says they shall cry there bitterly, going to show just how horrific and how bad and how destructive that time is going to be. That even those that are supposed to be mighty in the land are going to be brought down and broken down, right? Verse 15, that day is a day of wrath. And why is it a day of wrath? Because the Lord has been long suffering, watching the evil and the iniquity that has been going on the earth for so long, that now he's going to bring all that anger and unleash it in the form of judgment at once in many different ways. And that's why it's a day of wrath, because it's a day of the wrath of the Heavenly Father. A day of trouble. Remember, the last time the Lord got angry, he flooded the whole earth and saved just Noah and his family. Okay. And that's that was one kind of wrath. The kind of wrath that we're going to have to see now is going to surpass that which we saw, or that which happened in the old world. Okay. So verse 15, it says that day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress. Yeah, because when the day of the Lord comes, right, and the life as you know it changes, and there's nothing but hardships all around. People are being, killed like it's normal, and scriptures are going to go into that, right? Women are being taken against their will. People are being eaten, right, because of cannibalism. People are eating their children. You're hearing of cities being destroyed. You're hearing of different parts of the world being blown up. You're having natural disasters going on left and right. It's going to be very troublesome and distressful to a lot of people, right? Because a lot of people are going to get caught up in it. Buildings falling upon people, or earth opening up, some wild stuff. Different diseases killing people. This is a day of wasteness and desolation. A day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, which darkness represents, it gives the aura of death or negativity or bad times or fear. Okay. So with all these things taking place, yes, it will be physically dark as well, because of, ultimately when it gets to the point of, the chariots flying, the missiles flying, but also even, different electrical systems going down, right? But also it's going to represent the lack of hope, the lack of, like, as they say, they describe a ray of light, as like hope, or having a chance. But in this time, it's just going to be straight destruction. Okay. And now, unless you're of the elect, you ain't going to see that ray of light. If you do see it, it's going to be a laser beam coming to send you to the spirit world. Verse 16, a day of the trumpet and alarm against the fenced cities and against the high towers. And today, the fenced cities, well, back then, the fenced cities were, like, Jerusalem would be considered a fenced city, right? Or a defenced city, which is like a fortress, right? That's what a high tower is. It's a fortress. And they were built that way to protect themselves, having like this big wall for, like, Jericho, right? To defend themselves against, outside threats, or invaders. Well, today, you don't usually have a giant fortress, right? Some places you have walls that are built, but you have today, like, in terms of nuclear or military threats, you have missile defense systems, right? You have different militaries, and then on a regular day to day, you have, or what you had, was some sort of a system that detects and tracks whoever's coming in and out, to make sure that what's going on. Somebody coming into your country, and people can't just walk in. Well, that was up until some time ago, right? Now we know things are different. People just walk on in here like it's all good. But the point is, you have different technologies that play the role of those ancient giant walls and fortresses in terms of defending the city. So here the Lord, Zephaniah, is saying here, in this time, you're going to have those alarms going off, right? Warning the people that, you're under fire, you're under threat. Okay. So America, for example, is likened onto one of those fenced cities. Verse 17, and I will bring distress upon men. See, so here Zephaniah is prophesying that this is the Lord doing this, that he's going to bring. That's why it's called the day of the Lord. The Lord is going to bring that distress and that anger and that hard time upon men. And it doesn't, here is not gender specific. When it says men, it's referring to men, women, and children. And you can read in Ezekiel 9:5 about that. It says that they shall walk like blind men, meaning there's going to be so much destruction, so much going on, that people are going to be moving like blind men, meaning confusion. They're not going to have a sense of direction in knowing where to go, how to seek safety, how to get relief from the things that are happening. And why? Because they have sinned against the Lord Yahweh, and their blood shall be poured out as dust, and their flesh as the dung. And what it means by that is it's going to be everywhere. There's going to be bloodshed everywhere, right? Dead bodies everywhere. So just as common as it is to see dung, which is like feces, whether it's bird or dogs or whatever, just as you may be walking by and you accidentally step in it, or you turn around and you see it on the floor. And just as you have dust is everywhere, right? So that's how Zephaniah is likening the bloodshed that's going to be happening during this time, the amount of death and so on that's going to be taking place during this time. Verse 18, neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them in the day of the Lord's wrath. So now a quick precept for this is the book of I think it's Proverbs chapter 11 and 4. It says here, riches profit not in the day of wrath, just as we're reading in Zephaniah 1, but righteousness delivereth from death. So what people are going to realize is that money won't save you in a famine. You may try to buy food, but if you're in an area where your whole city doesn't have food and you can't go to anywhere else that has food, it doesn't matter how much money you have, right? An example is in the movie I Am Legend. I believe in the movie, it was in that movie where they were pretty much burning money for heat. You have all these stacks and racks. You could literally find yourself in a vault full of gold or cash or whatever, but it's not going to do anything for you because you can't eat it, right? And society isn't functioning, so you're not rich per se. So that's not going to be able to deliver you. How rich you are, what your status is, won't deliver you when the Lord brings judgment. When people are starving and you got a gang of cannibals chasing you, you're not going to pay them off, trust me, because they don't want money. They want your flesh, right? They want a pound of flesh that they can roast in the fire and they can go to town on it, right? When people are chasing women down the streets, trust me, they're not chasing you for your purse in that time. They want a different kind of bag, okay? Not the bag they can take sign out of, but the bag they can put sign into, okay? So in that time, your silver, your gold, none of that is going to be able to deliver you from the judgment the Lord is bringing. But the whole land, right? And here's the key part. The whole land shall be devoured by the fire of his jealousy. And that's going to be literal. And that land primarily is going to be here in Babylon, all right, aka America. Because this, as pertaining to other precepts, Isaiah 47, Isaiah 34, Revelation 18, Revelation 17, all these precepts prophetically point to the destruction of this place, because this place is the cancer of the earth. Okay, so as it says, the whole land shall be devoured by the fire of his jealousy. And what event is going to cause that to take place? Well, that's going to manifest by way of World War III, which is going to start it off as these nations start engaged in this war, and the war starts going nuclear, and they start using their nuclear weapons on each other. Guess what? America is going to be one of the lands that's completely destroyed by those nuclear weapons. But at the same time, the Lord is going to send his son back with the angels, and they're also going to bring some fire. As they're delivering the elect, they're also going to be lighting this place up. And that's why the whole land is going to be devoured. For he shall make even a speedy riddance of all them that dwell in the land. And as it says in the book of Revelation, I believe 18, that in 1 hour, the Lord is going to destroy this place. It's going to take only 1 hour to basically cleanse this place with fire. Hence a speedy riddance. Okay. And so that brings us to the end of Zephaniah, the first chapter. And as you can see, Zephaniah was prophesying about the wickedness going on in Judah, the judgment the Lord is going to bring upon them. And then he switches gear into the day of the Lord, right? And the things that the Lord is going to do in terms of judgment, or that he's going to bring upon the earth in that time. So, Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachak Wadash. And until next time, Shalom.